The fleet came from the darkness between the stars and moved like a shadow across the void. Silent, patient, ancient, each ship was a fortress, armed with weapons that had reduced dozens of worlds to ash. They had conquered without mercy, enslaved without hesitation, and left nothing but obedience behind. The people of those broken worlds had learned the name whispered in fear across the galaxy, the Zareth Dominion. They came for slaves, always slaves. To them, new species were not equals or allies, only fuel for their empire.
Laborers
For their factories, soldiers for their armies, breeders for their colonies. They had perfected the art of conquest over centuries, so perfect that they no longer feared failure. They believed no one could resist them. Now, their gaze had fallen upon a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, a world they had only just discovered, far at the edge of mapped space. To the Zareth, it was nothing more than another easy harvest. A primitive planet, no recorded fleets, no known allies, no history in the archives of resistance. Earth from the command deck of the flagship Voroth. High Commander Relton stood before the panoramic view of the target system. His armor shimmered faintly in the cold light of distant stars. Around him, his officers bent over control panels, speaking in low, clipped tones as streams of alien text rolled across screens. Their expressions held no fear, no doubt only. Calculation. Run full scans, Relton ordered, his voice like metal grinding against stone. Identify defensive stations. Disable their communications. Prepare boarding teams. We will take them quickly, before their governments understand what is happening. The sensor chief, a thin, insect-like officer with silver plating on his mandibles, looked up from his console. Commander, the planet has several orbital objects. Some appear to be satellites, others crude stations. Nothing that could threaten our fleet. Relton's mandibles curled into a slow, cruel smile. Good, they will not even see us coming until we are above their skies. Across the Zareth fleet, crews began waking the engines from hibernation. Weapons came online. With an almost lazy hum, as if they did not need to be in a hurry. For the Zareth War was a routine. A hunt with no risk. And yet, on the far edge of the system, something watched them. It did not broadcast its presence. It did not respond to the Zareth scans. It was small, almost invisible against the black, hidden within the shadow of a tumbling asteroid. Its hull was painted, in a coating that bent light, making it vanish from distant eyes. Inside, 4 humans sat strapped into acceleration chairs, silent and focused. Their eyes flicked between screens filled with alien script intercepted. Zareth Communications Captain Elias Ward leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. He was in his 40s, hair close-cropped, his face cut with the kind of lines that came from years of waiting for a fight. He watched the alien fleet's formation on his display, noting how casual their movement was. How certain they were of their own strength. "They don't even know we're here," said Sergeant Cole from the gunnery station, his voice low. Almost amused. "They'll know soon enough," Ward replied. "And when they do, it'll be too late to turn back." For weeks, the humans had been tracking faint signals from beyond Pluto. At first, they had thought it was a distant comet, reflecting strange radiation. But the readings had been too deliberate, too organized. Earth's deep space listening stations had pieced together fragments, language patterns, fleet signals, encrypted battle codes. Someone was coming by the time they were sure. The Zareth were already inside the solar system. Ward's small vessel, Blacklight, was not built for a direct fight. Its job was to watch, record, and warn. But Ward had no intention of just sending a message back to Earth and running, not when he had seen what these invaders had done to other worlds. He had read the old reports, colonies stripped bare, cities emptied, survivors shackled in chains. That would not happen to his home. "Signal Lunar Command," Ward ordered quietly. "Tell them we've confirmed hostile intent. Dent, the game is on." Far across space, the Voroth approached the moon, its massive shadow swallowing the light. Relton barely looked at the barren rock. He was already thinking of Earth's cities, its industries, its population numbers. To him, it was all inventory. The first wave of Zareth dropships detached from the fleet. Dark wedges of metal sliding toward the surface. Their destination, the human capital centers. But when they reached low orbit over Earth, they found something the Dominion had never seen before. Lights. Not just the lights of cities, but the precise glint of targeting sensors locking onto them from hundreds of points across the surface. The Zareth pilots hesitated. Their ships began receiving strange pings across their comm systems, not in the Zareth language, but in a blunt human tongue. Single repeated message. Leave orbit now or be destroyed. Relton laughed when he heard the translation. They dared to threaten us? With what? His answer came a heartbeat later, from the dark side of the moon. Something moved. It was not alien. It was human. Long, jagged silhouettes of warships emerged from shadow, engines flaring to life. They had been hidden in lunar craters, invisible to Zareth scans. Some were old orbital defense cruisers. Others were new designs that had never been shown to the public. Every gun turret, every missile bay, every rail cannon was already pointed at the invaders, and they opened fire without warning. The first Zareth dropship exploded instantly. It's torn apart by a railgun slug traveling at hypersonic speed. The second was split in half by a swarm of guided missiles. Within seconds, the quiet approach turned into chaos. Alien comm channels screamed warnings. Zodif formation broke apart as ships scrambled to evade. On the Blacklight Ward allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Welcome to Earth. The Zodif were not used to pray that bit back. Their fleets had always advanced like an unstoppable tide, but here the tide was meeting a wall of steel. Human warships darted in and out of range, vanishing into lunar cover before the Zareth could lock on. Massive kinetic rounds punched through alien armor as if it were paper. But humans were not just defending, they were hunting. A squadron of stealth corvettes, smaller even than the Blacklight, slipped past. The main battle, and made straight for the Zareth command ship. Their hulls glimmered with adaptive camouflage. They did not fire. They simply latched onto the alien vessel's underside like barnacles on a whale. Inside the Vorith, alarms shrieked. Officers shouted over each other, trying to track what was happening. Scanners showed nothing. No enemy ships within attack range. And yet, sections of the hull were registering breaches. Then the lights went out. The Vorith's main reactor shut down in less than 30 seconds. Its power conduits overloaded by a virus injected into the ship's network. Emergency systems tried to kick in, but they too failed. Across the massive flagship, alien soldiers found themselves stumbling in darkness. Somewhere deep inside the ship, human voices whispered in the dark. Wards crackled. The boarding teams were in. The mission had changed. It no longer was this about warning Earth. Now it was about sending a message to the Zareth Dominion itself. For hours, the battle raged in orbit. The Zareth fought back fiercely, but the humans fought with something the slavers did not understand: desperation. Every alien soldier killed, every ship crippled, was one step further from Earth ever being chained. When dawn finally broke over the planet below, the skies were littered with burning debris. Several Zareth warships lay shattered, tumbling toward the atmosphere in pieces. Others had fled, engines burning hot as they jumped for deep space, but one remained. The Voroth hung. In orbit, its hull scarred, its power gone. And from its massive external speakers, a voice boomed in the alien language, broadcast to every surviving Zareth ship within range. This is Earth. We are not your prey. Come for us again, and we will end you. The voice was calm, steady, and unmistakably human. On the bridge of the crippled flagship, Relton listened to the translation, his mandibles rigid with fury. In all his years of conquest, no species had dared speak to him like that. No one had struck the Dominion in such a way. He looked out at the blue planet below, his eyes narrowing. This was no ordinary harvest. This was war, and in the cold silence of space, far from any sun, the humans were already preparing for the next strike. This first encounter was supposed to be the beginning of Earth's chains. Instead, it had become the spark of a war that would burn across the stars. Had wanted slaves, they had found warriors. And warriors do not kneel. The cold silence of space was broken by the metallic roar of engines as the alien fleet moved in closer to Earth. They were not here to negotiate. They were not here to talk about peace or trade. They had made their decision months ago, in their glittering council chambers light years away. Earth would be conquered, stripped of resources, and its people turned into laborers for the Empire. To them, humans were just another primitive species, unworthy of freedom. The fleet commander, a tall insectoid figure with eyes like shards of obsidian, studied the blue planet hanging in the void. He imagined chains around its continents, its cities reduced to processing stations, and its people working until their bodies gave out. This was how empires survived, by feeding on the weak. But deep below the calm oceans and crowded cities of Earth, something dangerous stirred. Humans had learned about the invasion before the fleet even entered the solar system. They were not blind or unprepared.
For years,
Earth's intelligence network had been monitoring strange signals in the far reaches of space-encrypted military. Chatter, patterns of fleet movement, sudden silences in star systems too far for casual travel. The data painted only one conclusion: someone was coming for them. Governments met in secret. Generals spoke in voices heavy with the weight of history. And somewhere in those hidden discussions, quiet promise was made, a promise that if they came for Earth, they would regret it. Still, the first strike was the aliens to make. The fleet slipped past Mars' orbit and began deploying reconnaissance. Ships. From space, they saw humanity's defenses, a scattering of orbital stations, some old planetary defense platforms, and a few warships in low orbit. It all looked outdated, insufficient. To the alien commander, it was confirmation of everything he believed Earth would fall easily. The order was given. Ships moved in formation, ready to test human reaction times. The first explosions tore across the night skies over 3 continents. Orbital stations lit up like dying stars. Spaceports were struck without warning. Their launch bays turned into firestorms. In the chaos, Earth's civilians were told to shelter underground. But the order carried an unspoken truth. This was no short battle. This was an invasion. Entire cities went dark as power grids failed. Communications across nations flickered, scrambled by alien jamming signals. Above the planet, alien fighters danced between the clouds, firing precision bursts. That destroyed military bases before their defenses could be activated. To the Empire's commander, it was going perfectly, but it wasn't. Because those obsolete warships in orbit were not Earth's real defense. They were bait. They took the hits. They fell. But in doing so, they drew the alien fleet closer. Closer to a specific point in the solar system where the real trap waited. Hidden beyond the shadow of the moon, in a zone of darkness, shielded from long-range scans. A formation of black-armored human warships powered up. They were unlike anything the aliens had seen, angular, heavily armored, carrying weapon signatures that didn't match any known database. These were not the ceremonial defense fleets the aliens expected. These were weapons built for one purpose: to kill without hesitation. The trap was triggered. Without warning. From the darkness behind the moon, human ships surged forward at incredible speeds. Their engines flared like lightning bolts in the void, and their weapons lit up space in sudden, blinding bursts. The alien scouts didn't even have time to send warnings before they were erased by concentrated railgun fire that tore their ships apart molecule by molecule. The fleet commander's screens flared red with casualty reports. His mandibles clicked in frustration, his voice hissing orders to regroup. But it was too late. The humans had already chosen their targets. The counterattack was vicious, human. Warships did not fight like the alien fleets of the Empire. They didn't rely on elegant formations or predictable maneuvers. They fought like predators, fast, aggressive, and unpredictable. A pair of destroyers would dart in from opposite angles, unleash a storm of missiles, then vanish behind the cover of a larger battleship's guns. Carriers launched squadrons of drones that swarmed through the alien fleet, cutting through there, shielding with weapons that seemed too advanced for a primitive world. Every strike was calculated. Every loss was replaced instantly.
Ow.
The humans weren't just fighting back, they were hunting. Still, the aliens outnumbered them 3-1. The commander saw this as his advantage. He ordered his forces to surround. The human ships confident that sheer numbers would crush them. But numbers didn't matter when you were facing soldiers who had trained for this moment for decades. Earth's defense fleet split into smaller attack groups, forcing the aliens to chase them through debris fields and into tight combat zones where their size became a disadvantage. The alien cruisers designed for long-range bombardment found themselves unable to track fast-moving human corvettes that darted in and out, hitting weak points in their armor before disappearing again. On Earth's surface, civilians watched the battle play out in the night sky's bright streaks of light, cutting across the heavens, some ending in brilliant explosions. News feeds struggled to keep up with the chaos, but one thing became clear even to the frightened populations hiding underground. Humanity was not giving up. This wasn't a desperate defense. It was an ambush. And if the aliens had thought humans would surrender quietly, they were learning the hard way how wrong they were. As the hours stretched on, the alien fleet realized something chilling. Every time they adapted their tactics, the humans countered instantly as if they knew what the aliens would do before they did it. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. The humans had studied them. They had predicted their strategies. And now they were dismantling them piece by piece. By the battle's 6th hour, the alien commander was facing an impossible choice. Retreat would mean humiliation, the kind that could end his career. Continuing would mean risking the total destruction of his fleet. His pride told him to press on. His survival instinct told him to escape while he could. He chose the former. It was a mistake, because Earth had not yet revealed its deadliest weapons high above the battle. In the upper edges of the planet's atmosphere, something massive began to move, a ship so large that at first alien sensors mistook it for a small moon. It descended slowly, almost deliberately, its dark hull absorbing the light of distant stars. The moment its weapons came online, every alien in the fleet understood. This was not just a warship. This was a fortress. A mobile citadel bristling with enough firepower to end fleets in minutes. The humans called it Aegis 1. The first shot from Aegis 1 ripped through the alien flagship's forward shields like they weren't even there. In seconds, the bridge was engulfed in flame, and the commander's last thoughts were not of victory or conquests, they were of disbelief. How could a species they had dismissed as weak and unworthy have built something like this? How had they hidden such power from the eyes of the Empire? The answer was simple. Humans had never been weak, had only been waiting. And now, the galaxy would learn that when Earth fought, it fought to win. The wreckage of the alien flagship still drifted in orbit, a broken monument to arrogance. Pieces of its shattered hull reflected the pale sunlight, tumbling slowly through the void. Around it, the remains of dozens of cruisers, destroyers, and fighters floated like a steel graveyard. What had begun as the Empire's triumphant conquest had turned into a disaster that would be whispered about for generations. But the battle for Earth was only the beginning. Humanity was not going to sit and wait for the next wave. They were taking the fight. To the enemy, in the war room beneath the Atlantic Alliance's Central Command, the air was heavy with tension and electric with purpose. Large holographic maps displayed the positions of retreating alien vessels, the coordinates of nearby enemy supply lines, and the locations of several occupied colonies scattered across neighboring star systems. The humans knew the truth. If they let the Empire regroup, they would return in greater numbers. The next invasion would be larger, faster, and far more dangerous. Waiting meant death. Acting now meant survival. The decision was unanimous. The humans would strike back. Their fleets were already moving. Aegis 1, still radiating the heat of its recent battle, led the vanguard. Behind it came to carrier groups, each flanked by squadrons of corvettes and missile frigates. They weren't heading for alien territory blindly. They had intelligence stolen, hacked, and intercepted from the wreckage of the first battle. The alien data revealed something the humans hadn't expected. The Empire's outer rim defenses were weaker than anticipated. Many outposts were spread thin, guarding worlds not because they were militarily important, but because they were filled with forced labor camps. These camps were the foundation of the Empire's economy, fueling their war machine with resources mined by the enslaved, and in those camps were not just aliens from distant systems. There were humans. The first prisoners had been taken during quiet raids, colonists and explorers on the fringes of human expansion, abducted by the Empire's scouts before Earth even realized they were being watched.
Oh.
Some had been missing for decades. The thought that their own people were out there, chained and forced to work under alien whips, ignited a fury in every soldier and commander. This war was no longer about defense. It was about rescue and revenge. The first target was an asteroid mining complex in the Velas system, a facility guarded by 2 light cruisers and a scattering of automated defense drones. Compared to the fleet that had attacked Earth, it was almost laughably weak, but the humans didn't underestimate it. Every assault was planned with precision. A small detachment of stealth corvettes slipped into the system first, their hulls coated with sensor-scrambling material. They neutralized the defense drones before the cruisers even realized they were under attack. Moments later, railgun fire tore through the first cruiser's engine, sending it spinning helplessly into the asteroid belt. The second cruiser tried to run, but a pair of human missile frigates cut off its escape and pounded it until its reactor went critical. Inside, the mining complex panic erupted. Overseer Stahl, 4-armed reptilian creatures with cruel eyes, scrambled to secure the prisoners. But before they could execute their escape protocols, human boarding teams arrived. They moved through the corridors like shadows, clearing each section with silent efficiency. The prisoners, dozens of species, all gaunt and scarred from years of labor, watched in stunned disbelief as armored human soldiers cut their chains and handed them food and water. For some, it was the first act of kindness they had seen in years. One of the rescued humans, a woman with faded blue tattoos on her arms, looked at her liberators with a mix of wonder and disbelief. "You came for us," she whispered. A soldier simply nodded. "We came for everyone." The victory in the Velas system was swift, but its impact was explosive. Word spread across the occupied worlds that the humans had not only defeated an Imperial fleet, but were freeing slaves from the camps. For countless species living under the Empire's heel, it was a spark in the darkness. Quiet whispers turned into bold conversations. In some places, small acts of defiance began. Guards found their supply caches sabotaged, work quotas ignored, surveillance systems destroyed. The humans had not just struck militarily, they had lit the first fires of rebellion. The Empire's high command was in uproar. The loss of their flagship had been humiliating enough, but now they were facing a public relations nightmare across their own territories. Fear was spreading not just among the conquered, but among Imperial citizens themselves. If a so-called primitive race could destroy one of their fleets and tear open their prison camps, what else could they do? Orders went out for a massive counteroffensive. Fleets were recalled from distant sectors. New ships were rushed into production. The Empire intended to crush the humans before their defiance inspired something far worse, a galaxy-wide uprising. But by the time the counteroffensive fleet left hyperspace, it was already too late. The humans weren't waiting to be found. They were everywhere. Raiding parties struck deep into enemy space, hitting fuel depots, weapons factories, and communication hubs. Small human strike teams infiltrated occupied worlds and armed local resistance cells. In some systems, entire garrisons vanished overnight, their barracks reduced to smoldering ruins. The Empire's well-ordered control was unraveling faster than they could repair it. And Aegis, one Earth's mobile fortress, became a legend. Wherever it appeared, Imperial forces broke and ran. Its massive guns could split enemy capital ships in half with a single salvo. Its hangar bays released waves of fighters that shredded entire squadrons before they could regroup. The alien propaganda machine tried to downplay it, calling it a primitive dreadnought with stolen technology. But the soldiers who had seen it in battle told a different story. They called it the Harbinger of Earth. Still, the humans knew the Empire would not stop. Every battle they won bought them time, but the enemy's resources were vast. Sooner or later, the Empire would throw everything it had at them. The only way to survive was to go further, to hit harder, to make the cost of conquest so high that the empire would bleed itself dry trying. The war was changing. What began as an invasion had become something far greater, a movement. The humans had allies now, not through formal treaties, but through shared hatred of the same oppressors. Entire slave worlds looked to the skies and waited for the moment when the shadows would part and human ships would descend. The sound of human railguns had become the drumbeat of liberation. In the darkness between the stars, the leaders of Earth's fleets looked at the galaxy and saw a truth the Empire had ignored for centuries. You can chain a world, but you can't kill the will to fight. And now, that will had teeth. The warning came in the cold silence of deep space, far beyond the reach of inhabited systems. An automated scout probe picked up a gravitational distortion so massive it shook its instruments to failure. Before its systems burned out, it sent one final burst of data to Earth command coordinates, fleet size estimates, and a single, terrifying truth. The Empire was coming with everything it had. It wasn't a counterattack. It was extermination. Within hours, the war room beneath the Atlantic was lit with a dozen red threat markers. The incoming fleet wasn't just large, it was the largest the Empire had assembled in living memory. Hundreds of ships, including supercarriers and dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had yet faced, were advancing in a tight wedge formation. Their trajectory was clear. They weren't heading for Earth immediately. They were cutting a path through the systems where humanity had liberated slaves, crushing resistance before it could spread further. The Empire's strategy was brutal, simple. Destroy every spark of rebellion, leave nothing behind, and then turn on Earth itself. The first target was the Velis system, the very place where humanity's liberation campaign had begun. Surveillance drones captured the moment the Imperial fleet arrived. Planetary shields cracked within minutes. Orbital defense platforms didn't even have time to send distress signals before they were reduced to glowing debris. Cities on the asteroid colonies went dark one by one, their power grids collapsing under precision bombardment. No prisoners were taken. When the footage reached Earth Command, the silence in the room was colder than space itself. Every commander knew the message the Empire was sending. This is what happens to those who defy us. But fear was not what gripped the humans. It was rage. Aegis I was pulled from its current operation in order to spearhead the defense. It was not going alone to carrier groups for missile frigate lines. And an entire wing of stealth corvettes were converging on the sector. But even with every available ship racing to intercept, they would still be outnumbered 3-1. The math didn't favor them. The Empire's fleet had the firepower to crack entire planets. If humanity met them head-on, it could mean the end of Earth's expansion, and possibly Earth itself. Admiral Reese-Calder stared at the tactical display for a long moment, the blue glow of the holomap reflecting off the scars that lined his face. If they want a decisive battle, he said quietly, we'll give them one, but not where they expect. The plan was risky to the point of madness. Instead of confronting the enemy at Velis, humanity's fleet would intercept them. In the Naros corridor, narrow stretch of space lined with unstable asteroid fields and gravitational eddies, large capital ships would struggle to maneuver there. In theory, that would neutralize much of the Empire's numerical advantage. In practice, it meant luring the most dangerous fleet in the galaxy into a death trap without getting annihilated in the process. Timing was everything. The fleet had to arrive just ahead of the enemy, deploy mines, prepare ambush positions before the Imperial vanguard reached the corridor. If they were late by even an hour, the plan would fail and the Empire would steamroll through. The race was on. Days later, the darkness of the Naros corridor was lit by silent flashes of thrusters and the faint glint of mines being deployed. Human stealth corvettes ghosted through the asteroid fields, planting explosive charges on key rocks that could be detonated to create barriers or shrapnel clouds. Frigates took up firing positions behind dense clusters of debris, their missile tubes already primed. At the heart of it all, Aegis I floated like a predator in waiting, its massive guns tracking invisible targets. When the Imperial fleet finally arrived, it was like watching a storm front consume the stars. Their wedge formation broke slightly as they funneled into the narrow corridor, the bigger ships moving slower to avoid collisions. Scouts moved ahead, scanning for traps. They didn't find them in time. The first explosion tore through the lead destroyer, splitting it in two. An instant later, asteroid-sized chunks of rock, propelled by hidden charges, slammed into the formation, scattering frigates and corvettes like toys. And then the humans opened fire. Missiles screamed out of the debris fields. Railgun slugs tore through armor plating, and EMP warheads fried targeting systems. In the chaos, human fighters swarmed like hornets, targeting weak points and engines. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. The Empire's numerical advantage was meaningless in the narrow confines. They couldn't bring their full firepower to bear without hitting their own ships. But the humans were paying for every kill. A frigate shielding Aegis. One took a broadside from an enemy dreadnought and vanished in a flash of plasma. Fighter wings were cut in half by anti-air batteries. The battle was chaos-shifting, grinding, and deadly. The narrow space that saved humanity from being overwhelmed also meant there was nowhere to run in the middle of the carnage. Admiral Calder stood on Aegis One's command deck, calm, but relentless. Every order was given with the precision of a man who knew hesitation would get them all killed. Target their flagship, he said. The Imperial flagship, a monstrous vessel twice the size of Aegis, one had been hanging back, directing the battle. Its shields had held against the initial wave of attacks, but they were weakening. Human missile frigates, knowing they might not survive, pushed through enemy fire to get close enough for a point-blank salvo. Railguns from Aegis 1 joined in, their slugs punching deep into the ship's armored flanks. A critical hit tore through one of its reactor lines, and the ship began to list. Its once perfect maneuvering now, sluggish and erratic. Sensing the moment, Calder gave the order. All ships concentrate fire. Break that thing. The sky exploded. The flagship's shields collapsed under the combined barrage, and seconds later, its reactor went critical. The detonation lit the entire corridor, blinding sensors and sending shockwaves through both fleets. In that blinding light, the tide shifted. The Empire's formation fractured. Some captains fought on, driven by discipline and fear of their superiors. Others broke ranks, retreating under the cover of the debris field. The humans pressed the advantage, driving the enemy back toward open space. But it wasn't victory, not yet. The cost had been enormous. Nearly a third of the human fleet was gone, and many of the survivors were limping, their hulls scorched and engines failing. As the last Imperial ships jumped out of the system, the war room on Earth erupted in cheers, but Calder didn't smile. "They'll be back," he said quietly, "and next time they won't walk into a trap." He was right. It's far away in the dark halls of the Imperial throne world. The loss of the Naros corridor sent shockwaves through the ruling elite. For centuries, their fleets had crushed rebellion without effort. Now they had been humiliated twice by a species they had once considered prey. The Emperor himself issued the next order. There would be no more underestimating the humans. The next strike would not be about intimidation. It would be about total annihilation. And somewhere deep inside, the humans knew the war's most dangerous chapter was only beginning. The first signs were not warships, but silence. For 3 weeks after the Naros corridor, Imperial space was quiet, too quiet. Trade routes that normally pulsed with civilian traffic went dark. Pirate bands that often operated under the Empire's blind eye vanished. Even the usual surveillance drones stopped pinging human systems. It was as if the galaxy itself had drawn in a sharp breath and was holding it. Admiral Reese Calder didn't like silence. Silence meant planning, and planning meant something worse. Then brute force was coming. Humanity had fought the Empire in open battle twice and survived, but he knew those victories had forced the enemy to adapt. The next move would be different, calculated, patient, and designed to cut deeper than ships and steel. It began with the colonies. The first attack struck the agricultural world of New Canaan. 5 jumps from Earth, the planetary defense grid. Detected no incoming fleet. Instead, its orbital satellites malfunctioned simultaneously, their AI cores shorting out in a burst of corrupted code. Within hours, Every communications relay on the surface began broadcasting the same strange lupa. Simple, rhythmic pulse on all channels. At first, technicians thought it was static. Then people started disappearing. By the time a human scout ship arrived, new QAnon cities were abandoned. Crops still swayed in the wind. Doors were left open, meals half-eaten on tables. There were no bodies, just silence, and that endless pulse echoing across the airwaves. The Scout's crew retrieved data logs from the planetary net, but they contained only one chilling image, a shadowy silhouette. Vaguely humanoid but elongated, standing motionless in the middle of a street. It was not Imperial standard tactics. It was worse. Reports began flooding in from other colonies. Entire outposts were vanishing without resistance. No massive fleets, no orbital bombardments, just empty cities, missing populations, and that same pulse. Whatever the Empire was doing, it wasn't just killing. It was taking people. The theory came from Dr. Marin Kale, an AI warfare specialist working under Earth Command. The pulse, she explained, wasn't random. It was a signal meant to bypass normal cognitive filters, a form of neurosonic programming. In simpler terms, it was a mind weapon.
How?
Broadcast from satellites or infiltrated comm stations. It planted a compulsion deep into the subconscious, urging people to walk toward a location likely where Imperial forces waited unseen. It was slavery. Without chains, conquest without armies. And if the Empire could do it to the colonies, they could do it to Earth. Calder moved fast. The fleet was recalled from deep space, and every human system was ordered to switch to isolated communications. Civilian networks went dark. The galaxy's hum of chatter and data streams fell silent as humanity cut itself off like a fortress. Under siege, but the Empire wasn't just targeting planets, it was targeting morale. In refugee stations across liberated worlds, rumors spread of a new Imperial ghost fleet. Ships that could appear inside defended space without warning. Some said they bent light itself to remain invisible. Others claimed they could jump through hyperspace without detection. Most dismissed it as fear-talking until the attack on Bastion 4. Bastion 4 wasn't a soft target. It was a fortress world, ringed by missile batteries and housing one of humanity's largest shipyards. A place meant to withstand anything short of the Empire's full fleet. At one night, if night even had meaning in space, its outer defenses went silent. Internal sensors showed nothing. Then, without warning, explosions ripped through the shipyards from within. Dozens of docked vessels, including 2 nearly completed battlecruisers, were reduced to molten skeletons before a single shot was fired in defense. Survivors swore they'd seen nothing, no approaching ships. No boarding parties, just sudden destruction, and in the chaos, brief glimpses of shapes moving in the smoke. Inhumanly tall and unnaturally fast. When the news reached Earth, panic rippled through the command ranks. If the Empire could infiltrate like this, nowhere was safe. Calder ordered every base and ship to adopt full-spectrum scanning and triple their internal security. But deep down, he knew it was a stopgap. The Empire wasn't just attacking physically, they were dismantling trust, making humanity doubt their own eyes, their own systems, their own safety. The final blow in that terrible month came in the form of a message, not a transmission, but a physical object, a black cube, found drifting just beyond the moon's orbit. It emitted no detectable energy, carried no markings. Aegis 1 brought it aboard under heavy quarantine, locking it inside a sealed chamber. When they finally powered it,
The cube unfolded.
like blooming metal petals, revealing a single holographic projection. The Emperor himself. He did not look like the grand jeweled ruler the galaxy's stories had painted. He was thin, his face drawn into sharp, cruel lines, his eyes cold as glass. When he spoke, his voice was low and deliberate, carrying the weight of centuries of command. Humans, you have made your defiance known. You have embarrassed my fleets, and stirred the lesser species to delusions of freedom. You think this makes you strong? It does not. You are ants who have learned to bite. And like ants, you will be crushed not with fire, but with inevitability. He paused, as if savoring the moment. Already your worlds are emptying. Already your people walk willingly into my grasp. I will not need to invade Earth. You will bring yourselves to me. The chains I place on you will be chains of the mind. And when the last of you kneels, you will thank me. The projection vanished, and the cube collapsed into nothing more than inert metal. But the threat hung in the air long after. Calder convened the War Council that night. Round the table, military and civilian leaders argued in tight, tense voices. Some demanded an immediate strike on the nearest Imperial stronghold before the mind weapon spread further. Others warned that charging into a trap would only feed the Empire more victims. The room was split, fear gnawing at even the most hardened officers. Finally, Calder spoke, his voice carrying the calm weight that had seen them through battle after battle. We've beaten their fleets, he said. Now, they've changed the battlefield. Fine, we'll change it again. They think we'll sit here waiting for the noose to tighten? We won't. We're going hunting. The plan he proposed was dangerous beyond reason. Infiltrate the Empire's own space, find the source of the neurosonic signal, and destroy it before it could be turned on Earth itself. That meant penetrating deep into enemy territory, past layers of defenses no human ship had ever breached. The mission would fall to a small strike, force too small to be tracked easily, but armed with the most advanced stealth systems humanity had Aegis. One would lead, carrying not just soldiers but a hand-picked team of scientists to identify and dismantle whatever machinery was producing the signal. Failure meant more than defeat. It meant every human mind could become a puppet. The first beams of dawn touched the edges of Earth's rebuilt cities, but the scars of war were still fresh.
Ours.
Gleamed with new steel and glass. Yet beneath their foundations lay the graves of millions who had paid the price for freedom. The air carried a strange mix of pride and grief. For humanity had not just survived the greatest war in its history, it transformed into something the galaxy would never forget. From orbit, the view of Earth had changed. The defense grid now shimmered like a net of living fire, with massive stations and patrol fleets drifting in perfect synchronization. No longer a vulnerable blue dot waiting to be conquered, Earth now looked like a fortress that could stare down empires. And yet, deep inside that fortress, something far more dangerous was awakening. United. Will to never again kneel to any alien master. The alien coalition that had once sought to enslave humanity was no more. The war had ended in their defeat, but it wasn't the kind of defeat that left them licking their wounds. It was the kind that shattered their fleets, crushed their pride, forced their surviving leaders into exile on forgotten worlds. But even in their ruin, whispers moved across the void, rumors that the surviving warlords were rebuilding, waiting for a chance to strike back. Humanity knew this, and they were preparing. In the great war room of the United Earth Command, the surviving generals gathered around a three-dimensional holographic map of the known galaxy. The One's reactive council was now proactive, planning strikes, securing alliances and scouting regions no human ship had ever entered before. They thought they could put chains around our necks, Admiral Kira Vance said, her voice sharp with controlled fury. Instead, we've put chains around their worlds. But do not forget, chains can be broken. We will make sure there's never are. Beside her stood Jackson Ward, the man whose defiance had sparked the uprising. The war had left him older, harder, but not broken. He was now more than a soldier. He was a living reminder of what a single act of rebellion could ignite. And now, his mission was no longer survival. It was to ensure that Earth's new strength was not squandered. We don't wait for them to come, he told the generals. We find them. We hunt them. Finish this war in the shadows before it can ever touch our home again. The galaxy had taken notice, where once alien diplomats spoke to humanity. With condescension, they now spoke with caution and, in many cases, fear. Worlds that had once ignored Earth now sought its protection. Trade fleets began to cross human space under the watch of Earth's navy. But with influence came danger. For every ally that came to the table, there was another waiting in the dark, sharpening their knives in the outer reaches, far from Earth's defenses. A human reconnaissance squadron stumbled upon something that sent shockwaves through command. A hidden shipyard, massive, ancient, and clearly not built by the Coalition. It was alien, yes, but the design was unlike anything in the known records, and it was not abandoned. Dozens of Titanic warships were being assembled there, their hulls glowing with unfamiliar energy signatures. Whoever was building them wasn't just preparing for war. They were preparing for a war unlike any the galaxy had seen. Admiral Vance's orders were immediate. The shipyard had to be destroyed before it was completed. But Jackson Ward saw something. El-Sinatan, opportunity, we could take it, he argued. Turn their weapon into ours. Show the galaxy that we don't just fight, we claim what is used against us. The debate tore through command, but in the end, the decision was made. Earth's warriors would not just destroy the enemy's dreams. They would take them, reshape them, and use them to ensure that no chain would ever be forged for humanity. Again, the strike was set in motion. The fleet that left Earth's orbit that day was unlike anything that had sailed the stars. Before massive dreadnoughts armed with weapons still experimental, fighter wings flown by aces forged in the fires. Of the uprising and boarding teams made up of veterans who had once been slaves themselves. As they jumped into hyperspace, every crew member knew what was at stake. If they succeeded, Earth would hold the most fearsome war machines in the galaxy. If they failed, they would be gifting the enemy a reason to unite and strike back. And so, the story that had begun with an attempt to enslave humanity was far from over. For in the black void between the stars, the line between victory and annihilation was always razor thin. The galaxy had learned to fear Earth's warriors. Now it was about to learn what they could become when given the deadliest tools in existence. This was no longer about survival. This was about dominance. The galaxy would remember forever that the day they tried to put humanity in chains was the day they created their own conquerors.